March 2016. A Chinese national named Su Bin stood in a federal courthouse, pleading guilty to one of the most devastating acts of military espionage in American history. For 6 years, this unassuming aviation consultant had orchestrated the systematic theft of America's most guarded military secret, the complete blueprints for the F-35 Lightning II. 50 terabytes of classified data, engine schematics, radar designs, stealth technology that cost American taxpayers $400 billion to develop, all of it stolen and handed directly to the Chinese military. Welcome to Jet Insight, where we expose the truth behind military aviation's biggest scandals. The F-35 Lightning II wasn't just another fighter jet. It was supposed to be America's ace in the hole for the next 50 years. The most advanced stealth fighter ever conceived, designed to give American pilots an unbeatable edge over any adversary. But today, Chinese pilots are flying the J-35, a fighter that looks suspiciously identical to our F-35, powered by technology that American engineers spent decades perfecting. This isn't a story about fair competition or parallel development. This is about the largest military technology theft in human history, and the catastrophic security failures that made it possible. Tonight, we're going to expose exactly what went wrong, how Chinese hackers penetrated the most secure defense networks in America, and why the very people trusted to protect our military secrets failed so spectacularly. We'll reveal how a single vulnerability in a Lockheed Martin subcontractor's network gave China access to everything, from the F-35's revolutionary radar systems to the precise methods for making an aircraft invisible to enemy detection. We'll show you the shocking similarities between the American F-35 and China's copycat J-35, proving beyond doubt that this wasn't inspiration. It was industrial espionage on an unprecedented scale. And we'll uncover why America's response to this massive breach was too little, too late, allowing China to not only steal our technology, but use it to build fighters that now threaten American air superiority in the Pacific. If you're outraged by this betrayal of American military superiority and want justice for our service members, type "proud" in the comments below. Our pilots deserve better protection than this. The story of what went wrong begins in 2001, when the Pentagon launched the Joint Strike Fighter program. This wasn't just about building another aircraft. This was about creating the backbone of American and Allied air power for the next half-century. The F-35 Lightning II was designed to be 3 aircraft in one: a conventional takeoff fighter for the Air Force, a short takeoff variant for the Marines, and a carrier-based fighter for the Navy. But what made the F-35 truly revolutionary was its stealth technology. American engineers had spent billions developing radar-absorbing materials, precision-shaping techniques, and advanced cooling systems that would make the aircraft virtually invisible to enemy radar. The F-35's AN/APG-81 radar could detect enemy aircraft while remaining undetected itself. Its electro-optical distributed aperture system provided pilots with unprecedented situational awareness. Its advanced electronic warfare systems could jam enemy communications and missiles. This technology represented the crown jewel of American military innovation. Every component, every design element, every line of software code was classified at the highest levels. The Pentagon implemented multiple layers of security to protect this information, from physical security at manufacturing facilities to sophisticated cybersecurity measures for digital networks. But here's where the first critical failure occurred. The F-35 program was massive, involving multiple prime contractors, hundreds of subcontractors, and thousands of suppliers across the United States and allied nations. Each connection point represented a potential vulnerability, and the program's complexity made comprehensive security oversight nearly impossible. Lockheed Martin, the prime contractor, worked with major partners like Northrop Grumman, BAE Systems, and Pratt & Whitney. These companies, in turn, worked with hundreds of smaller firms specializing in everything from advanced materials to software development. The supply chain extended across multiple countries, including the United Kingdom, Italy, the Netherlands, and others. The security challenge was enormous. How do you protect classified information when it needs to be shared among thousands of people across dozens of organizations in multiple countries? The Pentagon's solution was to create a complex system of security clearances, compartmentalized access, and digital security measures. But this system had a fatal flaw. It assumed that security measures at every single point in the network would be perfect. They weren't. The first major security breach occurred in 2007, though it wouldn't be fully understood until years later. Chinese hackers, working for the People's Liberation Army's Technical Reconnaissance Bureau, had identified vulnerabilities in the networks of F-35 subcontractors. These smaller companies often lacked the sophisticated cybersecurity measures of major defense contractors, making them perfect entry points for determined adversaries. The hackers used what cybersecurity experts call spear phishing, highly targeted emails designed to trick specific individuals into clicking malicious links or downloading infected attachments. These weren't random attacks. They were carefully researched operations that targeted specific employees at specific companies with access to F-35 data. Once inside a subcontractor's network, the hackers employed lateral movement techniques to spread through connected systems, eventually gaining access to databases containing F-35 technical specifications. The stolen data was encrypted during transmission, making it difficult for American security systems to detect what information was being compromised. But the real security failure wasn't technical. It was human. The Pentagon's oversight of subcontractor cybersecurity was inadequate. Many smaller firms in the F-35 supply chain lacked the resources or expertise to implement military-grade cybersecurity measures. The Defense Department knew this was a problem, but failed to provide adequate support or enforcement. A 2009 Government Accountability Office report identified significant cybersecurity vulnerabilities in the defense supply chain, specifically mentioning concerns about protecting sensitive technical data. The report recommended improved oversight and standardized security requirements for all contractors and subcontractors. These recommendations were largely ignored. Meanwhile, the Chinese operation was expanding. Su Bin, the mastermind behind much of the F-35 theft, had established a sophisticated network of hackers and intelligence operatives. Working from his base in Canada, Su Bin coordinated attacks on multiple American defense contractors, always staying one step ahead of American counterintelligence efforts. Su Bin's operation wasn't just about stealing data, it was about understanding and exploiting American vulnerabilities. His team studied American security procedures, identified the weakest links in the defense supply chain, and developed sophisticated methods for avoiding detection. They knew exactly what information was most valuable and where to find it. The scope of the theft was staggering. By 2013, Chinese hackers had penetrated more than 1,600 Defense Department computers, compromised over 600,000 user accounts, and stolen what the National Security Agency estimated as 50 terabytes of classified information, equivalent to 5 entire libraries of Congress. But the crown jewel was the F-35 data. Chinese hackers gained access to detailed radar specifications, including the exact number and types of modules used in the AN/APG-81 system. They stole engine schematics showing precise methods for cooling turbine gases, a critical technology for maintaining stealth capabilities. They obtained aft deck heating contour maps that revealed exactly how the F-35 manages heat signatures to avoid infrared detection. Most damaging of all, they stole the software algorithms that control the F-35's stealth shaping and radar cross-section management. This information essentially provided a blueprint for designing stealth aircraft that could match or counter American capabilities. The intelligence failure was compounded by a fundamental misunderstanding of Chinese capabilities and intentions. Many American officials believed that China lacked the technical sophistication to effectively use stolen F-35 data. They assumed that copying advanced technology was impossible without the underlying industrial base and engineering expertise. They were wrong. China had been systematically building its aerospace capabilities for decades, often through legitimate technology transfer agreements with Western companies eager to access Chinese markets. By the time large-scale F-35 data theft began, China already possessed much of the industrial infrastructure needed to turn stolen blueprints into operational aircraft. The first visible result of this massive intelligence failure appeared in 2012, when China unveiled the FC-31, later redesignated as the J-35. Aviation experts immediately noticed the striking similarities to the F-35. The aircraft's overall configuration, engine placement, weapons bay design, and even cockpit layout showed unmistakable influences from American technology. But the similarities went beyond visual appearance. Analysis of Chinese technical publications revealed that Chinese engineers were working with detailed knowledge of F-35 systems that could only have come from classified American sources. Chinese research papers discuss stealth technologies, radar systems, and engine cooling methods that matched F-35 specifications exactly. The most damning evidence came from Su Bin himself. When he was finally arrested in 2014, investigators found extensive correspondence between Su Bin and Chinese military officials discussing the stolen F-35 data. In one email from 2011, Su Bin boasted that the stolen information would allow China to rapidly catch up with US levels in stealth fighter technology. Su Bin had personally translated thousands of pages of stolen technical documents into Chinese and prepared detailed intelligence reports for the People's Liberation Army General Staff Headquarters. These reports weren't just raw data dumps. They were sophisticated analyses that explained how American stealth technology worked and how it could be replicated or countered. The security failure extended beyond just protecting data. American counterintelligence agencies failed to detect the scope of Chinese operations until it was too late. Despite multiple warnings about Chinese cyber espionage, the FBI and other agencies were focused primarily on traditional human intelligence operations rather than cyber threats. When the theft was finally discovered, the American response was fragmented and ineffective. Different agencies had different pieces of the puzzle, but no one had overall responsibility for coordinating the response. The Pentagon focused on improving its own cybersecurity, while the Justice Department pursued criminal cases against individual hackers. Meanwhile, the broader strategic implications of the technology theft were largely ignored. The most egregious failure was the lack of consequences for the organizations that allowed the theft to occur. Despite massive security breaches that compromised America's most sensitive military technology, no senior officials were held accountable. Subcontractors with inadequate cybersecurity faced no penalties. The systemic failures that enabled the theft were never fully addressed. By 2015, when Edward Snowden's leaked documents finally revealed the full scope of Chinese F-35 espionage, the damage was already done. China had not only stolen the technology, but had already begun incorporating it into their own aircraft development programs. The J-35 made its first flight in 2012. Just 5 years after the major F-35 data theft began. This timeline was impossibly fast for indigenous development, providing clear evidence that the aircraft was based on stolen American technology. Chinese aerospace companies that had struggled for decades to develop competitive aircraft suddenly produced a stealth fighter that matched American capabilities in multiple areas. But the most shocking revelation came in November 2024, when China officially unveiled the J-35 at the Zhuhai Air Show. The aircraft wasn't just similar to the F-35, it was nearly identical in key areas. The nose configuration, weapon bay layout, landing gear design, and cockpit systems all showed clear evidence of being copied from American blueprints. Intelligence analysts confirmed that the J-35 incorporated stolen F-35 technology in its radar systems, electronic warfare capabilities, and stealth coatings. The aircraft's performance specifications, released by Chinese sources, matched F-35 capabilities so closely that they could only have been achieved through access to classified American data. The policy failures that enabled this massive theft were numerous and interconnected. First, the Pentagon failed to adequately secure the F-35 supply chain, allowing vulnerabilities at subcontractor facilities to compromise the entire program. Second, cybersecurity standards were inconsistent across the defense industrial base, creating multiple points of entry for determined adversaries. Third, American counterintelligence agencies were unprepared for the scale and sophistication of Chinese cyber operations. Traditional counterintelligence focused on human agents and conventional espionage methods, leaving cyber vulnerabilities largely unaddressed. Fourth, the government's response to discovered breaches was inadequate. Instead of treating cyber espionage as a national security crisis requiring coordinated government-wide action, agencies responded in isolation, allowing Chinese operations to continue even after some aspects were discovered. Fifth, there were no meaningful consequences for organizations that failed to protect classified information. This lack of accountability ensured that the same security failures would be repeated in other programs. The strategic implications of these failures are profound. The F-35 was designed to give American and Allied pilots a decisive advantage over any potential adversary. That advantage has now been compromised by our own security failures, potentially putting American pilots at risk in any future conflict. The theft also undermined the economic benefits of F-35 development. American taxpayers invested $400 billion in developing revolutionary aerospace technology, only to see that technology stolen and used to compete against American interests. Chinese aircraft built with stolen American technology now compete directly with American products in international markets. Perhaps most damaging, the F-35 theft demonstrated to other adversaries that American military technology could be successfully targeted and stolen. The success of Chinese operations has likely encouraged similar efforts by other nations, multiplying the threat to American technological advantages. The human cost of these failures cannot be measured in dollars or technological capabilities. Every American pilot who flies in combat depends on having the best possible equipment and the technological edge needed to accomplish the mission and return home safely. The theft of F-35 technology directly threatens that edge, potentially putting American lives at risk. As we delve deeper into this devastating security failure, I want to address our military veterans and defense professionals watching tonight. If you've served our nation in uniform, worked in defense contracting, or have deep appreciation for military technology, your insights are invaluable to our community. We invite you to join our discussions and share your perspectives on how we can better protect our nation's military advantages. Your experience helps us understand these complex issues and work toward better solutions. The cover-up and damage control efforts that followed the discovery of F-35 theft were almost as problematic as the original security failures. When the Pentagon first acknowledged cyber intrusions into F-35 contractor networks in 2009, officials downplayed the significance and claimed that no classified information had been compromised. This assessment was either deliberately misleading or demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of what had occurred. Internal Pentagon documents, later revealed through congressional investigations, showed that officials knew the breaches were far more serious than they publicly admitted. The decision to minimize public disclosure of the theft had several motivations. First, acknowledging the full scope of the breach would have been politically embarrassing for the Pentagon and the Obama administration. The F-35 program was already facing criticism for cost overruns and delays. Revealing that its technology had been stolen would have provided ammunition for critics. Second, full disclosure might have compromised ongoing counterintelligence operations aimed at tracking Chinese espionage activities. However, this concern was largely misplaced, as the Chinese were already well aware that their operations had been at least partially detected. Third, Pentagon officials worried that revealing the extent of F-35 technology theft might undermine international confidence in American military technology and affect foreign sales of the aircraft. Several allied nations had invested billions in the F-35 program, and acknowledging that the technology had been compromised might have led to order cancellations. But the decision to downplay the theft had serious consequences. It prevented Congress from conducting meaningful oversight of defense cybersecurity, delaying necessary reforms and improvements. It also sent the wrong message to adversaries, suggesting that major cyber operations against American military programs would face minimal consequences. The cover-up also prevented the American public from understanding the true scope of the threat facing our military technology. Without public awareness and pressure, there was little incentive for defense contractors and government agencies to implement the expensive and disruptive changes needed to improve cybersecurity. When the full scope of the F-35 theft was finally revealed through Snowden's leaked documents in 2015, the damage was irreversible. China had already incorporated stolen technology into the J-35 program, and the aircraft was approaching operational status. The window for preventing Chinese acquisition of American stealth technology had closed years earlier. The policy response to the revealed theft was fragmented and largely ineffective. The Pentagon implemented new cybersecurity requirements for contractors, but these measures were applied inconsistently and often lacked adequate enforcement mechanisms. The Justice Department increased prosecutions of Chinese intelligence operatives, but these efforts had little impact on ongoing operations. Congress held hearings and demanded accountability, but no senior officials were disciplined for the massive security failure. The Government Accountability Office issued reports recommending improvements, but many recommendations were either ignored or implemented superficially. The most significant policy change was the inclusion of cybersecurity requirements in the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement, which governs defense contracting. However, these requirements were often waived for critical programs or smaller contractors, limiting their effectiveness. The intelligence community also implemented new procedures for sharing threat information with defense contractors. But these efforts were hampered by classification restrictions and bureaucratic obstacles. Many contractors continued to lack adequate understanding of the threats they faced or the measures needed to counter them. The failure to hold anyone accountable for the F-35 theft sent a dangerous message throughout the defense establishment. If massive security failures that compromise America's most sensitive military technology carry no consequences, what incentive do officials have to prioritize security over cost and convenience? This lack of accountability was exemplified by the career trajectories of officials responsible for F-35 security during the period of major theft. Rather than facing discipline or career consequences, many were promoted or moved to other senior positions within the defense establishment. The contrast with private sector accountability is striking. In the business world, security failures that result in major data breaches often lead to immediate termination of responsible executives. In the defense establishment, similar failures seem to carry no professional consequences whatsoever. The technical aspects of what went wrong reveal fundamental misunderstandings about cybersecurity within the defense establishment. Many officials seem to believe that classification levels and physical security measures were sufficient to protect digital information. They failed to understand that cyber threats require entirely different defensive approaches. The F-35 program's cybersecurity was designed around outdated assumptions about how adversaries would attempt to steal information. Security measures focused on preventing unauthorized access to classified facilities and protecting paper documents. The possibility that adversaries might steal terabytes of digital information without ever setting foot in a classified facility wasn't adequately considered. Network segmentation, which might have limited the damage from initial breaches, was often inadequate or non-existent. Once Chinese hackers gained access to contractor networks, they could often move freely through connected systems, accessing information far beyond their initial entry point. Encryption of sensitive data was inconsistent and often implemented poorly. Many systems used outdated encryption standards that could be broken by determined adversaries with sufficient computing resources. Even when strong encryption was used, key management practices were often inadequate, allowing unauthorized access to encrypted information. Monitoring and detection systems were primitive by modern standards. Many networks lacked the capability to detect unusual data transfers or unauthorized access attempts. When suspicious activity was detected, response procedures were often slow and ineffective, allowing adversaries to complete their operations before countermeasures could be implemented. The human factor in cybersecurity was almost entirely neglected. Employees and contractors received minimal training on cyber threats and were often unaware of the sophisticated social engineering techniques used by adversaries. The spear phishing attacks that initiated many breaches succeeded because targets lacked the knowledge needed to identify and report suspicious communications. Perhaps most critically, there was no comprehensive understanding of the F-35 program's digital architecture and information flows. Different organizations and contractors maintained their own security measures without coordinating with others, creating gaps and vulnerabilities that adversaries could exploit. The international implications of F-35 technology theft extend far beyond the immediate military consequences. The F-35 program involved multiple allied nations, each of which contributed financially and technologically to the aircraft's development. The theft of F-35 technology meant that these allies' investments and contributions were also compromised. Allied nations had shared sensitive technologies with the United States based on agreements that this information would be protected. The failure to secure F-35 data represented a breach of trust that damaged American credibility and complicated future cooperation agreements. Some allies began questioning whether sharing advanced technologies with the United States was wise, given the apparent inability to protect such information from foreign adversaries. This skepticism has had lasting effects on international defense cooperation and technology sharing agreements. The theft also affected the global market for advanced military aircraft. Countries considering purchases of American aircraft now had to weigh the risk that the technology might already be compromised or could be stolen in the future. Some potential customers began looking at alternative suppliers, reducing American market share and influence. China's success in stealing and replicating F-35 technology demonstrated to other adversaries that American military systems were vulnerable to cyber espionage. This has likely encouraged similar efforts by other nations, multiplying the threats facing American military technology. The economic costs of the F-35 theft are difficult to calculate, but certainly run into the tens of billions of dollars. The direct cost of developing the stolen technology was enormous, but this represents only a fraction of the total economic impact. Lost sales of F-35 aircraft to international customers represent billions in foregone revenue for American companies. Competition from Chinese aircraft built with stolen American technology has undercut American market share in several regions. The cost of implementing improved cybersecurity measures across the defense industrial base has been substantial, though necessary. These costs ultimately get passed on to taxpayers through higher prices for defense systems. Perhaps most significantly, the theft has forced the United States to accelerate development of next-generation aircraft to maintain technological advantages. This acceleration has increased development costs and compressed testing schedules, potentially affecting the safety and reliability of new systems. The strategic implications of losing the F-35's technological edge are profound and long-lasting. American air superiority has been a cornerstone of military strategy since World War II, enabling rapid deployment of forces anywhere in the world and providing credible deterrence against potential adversaries. The compromise of F-35 technology has eroded this advantage, forcing American military planners to reconsider fundamental assumptions about air combat and force projection. The possibility that adversaries might field aircraft with comparable capabilities changes every aspect of military planning. In the Pacific theater, where tensions with China continue to rise, the loss of overwhelming air superiority could affect American ability to defend allies like Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea. If Chinese aircraft can match American capabilities, the credibility of American security guarantees comes into question. The theft has also affected American negotiating positions in international disputes. The knowledge that China possesses advanced military capabilities developed using stolen American technology undermines American leverage in diplomatic negotiations. Looking forward, the lessons of the F-35 theft must inform how America protects its remaining technological advantages. The current export restrictions on Chinese access to American aerospace technology represent a belated but necessary response to continued technology theft. However, export restrictions alone are insufficient. Fundamental reforms in how America develops, produces, and protects military technology are needed to prevent future thefts on the scale of the F-35 breach. Cybersecurity must be integrated into every aspect of defense technology development, from initial research through production and deployment. This integration requires new approaches to contractor oversight, supply chain security, and information sharing. Accountability measures must ensure that officials responsible for protecting military technology face real consequences for security failures. Without accountability, the incentives for prioritizing security over convenience and cost savings will remain inadequate. International cooperation on cybersecurity and counterintelligence must be improved to match the global nature of modern threats. Adversaries operate across national boundaries. Defensive efforts must be similarly coordinated. Most importantly, America must recommit to the innovation and technological development that created our military advantages in the first place. The best defense against technology theft is to maintain such a rapid pace of innovation that stolen technology quickly becomes obsolete. The F-35 represents one of the greatest achievements in aerospace engineering, incorporating revolutionary technologies that should have guaranteed American air superiority for decades. The theft of this technology represents one of the greatest intelligence failures in American history, with consequences that will affect American security for generations. But this story is also a testament to American ingenuity and resilience. The same innovative spirit that created the F-35 is already at work developing next-generation technologies that will restore and extend American advantages. The challenge is ensuring that these new technologies are protected from the threats that compromise the F-35. Our military men and women deserve to have the best possible equipment when they're called upon to defend our nation. The F-35 theft represents a failure to provide that equipment with the protection it deserved. We must do better in the future. The brave pilots who fly F-35s today are still operating the most capable multi-role fighter in the world, despite the technology theft. Their skill, training, and dedication remain unmatched, but they deserve to know that their equipment advantages are protected and that their sacrifice in defending our nation is matched by our commitment to giving them every possible advantage. The story of what went wrong with F-35 security is ultimately a story about the price of complacency and the importance of vigilance in protecting our national assets. In an age of persistent cyber threats and determined adversaries, there is no room for the kind of security failures that compromised America's most advanced fighter jet. By learning from these failures and implementing the changes needed to prevent their recurrence, we can honor the sacrifice of those who serve and ensure that American technological advantages continue to protect our nation and our way of life. The F-35 may have been compromised, but American innovation and determination remain our greatest weapons in any technological competition. That's the complete story of how America's most advanced fighter jet was stolen and copied by China, and what went wrong to make this massive security failure possible. If this analysis opened your eyes to the importance of protecting our military technology, please hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of the threats facing American defense capabilities. Your support helps us continue exposing the truth about our national security challenges.